So let's get started. My name is Maro Inoue. I'm coordinating the NCLLC research talk series. It's a great pleasure to introduce to you today's presenter, a visiting scholar from Morocco, Dr. El Maoka. He received his PhD in French language and civilization at the Sorbonne Nouvelle University in Paris, as well as master's degree in education at Nanterre University in Paris. He's a professor in the Department of the French Language and Literature at Ibn Zar University at the Agadir, Morocco. He's also serving at that university as the director of the Laboratory Research in Languages and Communication. His latest publications include two books, Education at the Crossroads, Research and Reflections, published back in 2023. And then this year, Language and Literature, Transversality and Contextual Approaches, together with an article titled Tracing Learners in an Online Device, which was published last year. Today's presentation is entitled Literature and Technologies, Connection, Disconnection, and the Pursuit of Meaning. Here's the abstract of the presentation. Literature, like most fields in the humanities, is impacted by technology, which has transformed both our teaching and research missions. This presentation aims to better understand the interaction between technology and our academic endeavors by highlighting the connections and disconnections between the two, and attempt to reconcile our scholarly pursuit with the benefits and challenges of technology. A very timely topic of presentation, as we're all excited as well as overwhelmed and bewildered by this increasing influence in technologies on academic endeavors. The planned format of the colloquium is, as usual, 40 minutes of presentation together with the 20 minutes of Q&A. So we're going to do the session up until 4:30 or so, even though depending on how things go, this format is going to be modified. This room is reserved until 5 o'clock, so we're going to keep talking until then. Just as a heads up for future presentations, Lenny is going to speak in January, and then Miyabi is going to speak in April. I'm going to give you the details later on. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Marto Maoha.
Thank you very much, Professor Maro, for all your efforts 1 month ago, because you have changed many emails to make really this nice event, this nice moment where I can get in touch with colleagues and also with students of the department. It's an honor for me, and I'm also very happy and I want to thank you first of all for hosting me in your department and for having me here with this talk. I thank very much Professor Sabiacho for all the actions that she did since 2 or 3 years for the collaboration, and thank also Jeffrey who signed my visiting scholar, Nisreen, and all the colleagues. Really, I'm very happy to be here. It's a rich and enriching experience, and also I'm happy that one of our students is here now, Yasmin Sarini. So I wish her a very successful formation. So something which is very special. November 2000, it was my PhD at that time at La Sorbonne. When I finished my PhD, I was in a situation where the informatic, let's say the desktop, starts to appear in universities and also on our desks. But it was just material where we can put our knowledge. There's not yet the online, so as to see the gap between 2000 and now. You can really have the first idea that we are really in a disruptive moment, because the development of technology is really going high and high. But unfortunately, our not the practice, but our skills and our knowledge of our practice are really less than the rhythm which technology takes in their expansion and evolution. That's why I put, first of all, literature, because it's my case, but I invite you to put any field that you are working in. It will be exactly the same, because in general, I'm talking about one case, but it concerns all the human sciences. Because human science, as you know, are very important for humanity, not just for our society, but for our humanity from the beginning. It will be more and more important because we have now many problematics that are generated with the technology users, with the technology also using, and that's why we need anthropology, we need linguistics, we need psychology, we need literature, we need everything that can give answers to all the questions that we can maybe have the opportunity to ask now, but surely and certainly we will be, unfortunately, one day too late to pose some question that unfortunately answers won't be efficacious. Mainly, for instance, the problematic of the addiction of users, mainly for the children, even for the younger people with the technologies. So that's why my title is about literature and technologies, because we don't have just one technology. From the beginning, when technology is just for desktops, that means we just stock our data inside the desktop. Till now we have really many variety of technology, the clouding, computing, clouding, and now we have, of course, artificial intelligence, which is of course something which is more disruptive, as you know. And we have really the big question, the big problematic is the meaning, and the meaning came, of course, with the critical thinking, with also this all humanity disciplines, which help us just to understand and to have also the sense of our practice and also of our needs towards this technology, which of course it's a progress. There's no doubt about this. But I think that I agree with many authors about this, that technology is concurrencing the technologies. That humans are just sometimes spectator, but in a worst situation, they are consumers and customers. That's why human science can really help us in a way to find the meaning, and I will talk about this by talking about some books and some also some disciplines. So that's why sometimes I will talk about literature, but you can also feel free to just to change with another discipline. You are really. So literature first. As you know, literature beginning with the humanities, because as we say, at the beginning was the verb. So that means word. And the word, of course, with the word we can of course say the tales. We can construct history. We can put the meaning around, of course, characters, around the actions, and so on. So the literature in our society, in the human history, is known, but it is source of meaning. Because once we read history, once we read, for instance, novel or theater, etc., or poem, we really have time to think about it, and it generates in us a meaning, something which is new for us. So we have really in this opportunity of reading any literature text, we have really the opportunity to pass from ignorance to knowledge. That's why literature will give us really many things which are which helping us to understand also all our environment, human one, societal one, but also cosmogonic one, about, for instance, the deep, about the other one, the others. So literature is source of understanding and meaning. It enhances also the critical thinking. Why critical thinking? Because when, for instance, we read novel, we have something which is close to reality, but this reality take really work of the author. That means he give us one way to see the reality, and we are not, of course, in alienation to follow his presentation, but we have a discussion inside of our mind to have really the right judgment, the right opinion about the topic that we can read in that text literature, of course. So that's why literature is always close to human being, because it brings close to him some preoccupation and also some need that he can have to find, for instance, answers to many metaphysical, for instance, asks, or even some needs which are material, for instance. So literature also is something which is universal. We don't have really nationality for literature. It's once it is good for one country, it is good for all the world. That's it's very important. So literature also raise question about human needs and societal problem. When I ask societal problem, it's always according to the problems that we have, that problematics that we have. For instance, as I talked before about technologies. What about technology now? I won't really talk about what is technology, because I'm sure you know more things than I about technology, but I will really go to a human side so as really to raise some ideas that gave us the opportunity after to have a debate or a change. So the technology nowadays structuring our social relationship. We can't imagine one day our day without technology, because we have now habit, we develop really habit that we need technology, mainly with the variety of support that we have. Laptop or smartphone, smart glasses, any smart anyway, material which is connected. So it creates really, of course, a need, artificial need, of course, really to be aware about this, because we can really live without technology anyway. That's why I'm talking about the meaning, but that's the technology became really one part of us. That's why some authors talk about the digital humanism. And humanism, as you know, we don't really have many humanism typology, many humanism categories. I remember I've read to Claude Lévi-Strauss. He talked about three humanism. One humanism first, it's when we passed from oral culture to the writing. And once we pass from the print to print machine. And the third one, he said, is when we pass to the democracy. The three of period constitute really the humanism. But now we start to talk about the four humanism. Mainly, I'm talking about Millet Doyer, who writes first interesting book. I really advise you to read it, The Big Conversion of Digital, and also in this in his humanities, where it says, I am in a way to generate a polemic because we need a debate about this. We really are really in a way that we have or of our relation with the others by technology or not. This is if we have a response to this question by we are not. Désolé. Non, ça c'est. This is technology. Really are in digital human. So there's no doubt. With the experimentation, it became more easy to show it. And that shows also that practice and skills about digital are not yet together. We are in practice, but we are not in digital skills. Anyway, so the new digital humanism is raising because we see that everything that humans have to do today, use automatically the technology. Even he can really do without. So that means there's something which is raising, and of course, we are not yet all in it, but we are maybe in a new moment which we can really talk about this digital humanism, which is with digital humanism highlights the complex relationship between people, society, nature, and machines. So you see all these words, of course, talk about the component of our humanity in general. So what is now the change? This is maybe something that we can observe, but we have really to pass to another step where we have to think. We have really to ask questions. We have really to find also answers so as to understand what are really the way that these technologies are, of course, in plural, technologies works so as really to change our life, our vision, our opinions, our habits, meaning on any way of our human life. And for us, of course, human science professors, searchers, and also students, we have a big challenge. I think that we have a big challenge more than the other disciplines, more than scientific, technological, because they are in the technicity. and the technicity is always evolving, is always progressing. Now, I think, and I don't know if you have the same observation, I think that the human science starts really to be more and more maybe late to ask questions first, of course, and also to answer some questions that our society needs, that human being needs, because, as I said, we are alienated by technology. We are more in practice, but unfortunately, we are not yet in such reflection, because the reflexive way, of course, help us to understand things. So we have to find really the articulation between the technologies and human science. For instance, anthropology and the technology by, of course, putting the human being in the middle, in the bottom of the search. Linguistics, of course, when we are thinking, of course, about ChatGPT now, we can find many, for instance, production, which are written with ChatGPT, and I think that linguistics British searchers can really find how we can use ChatGPT in order to product something which is different. Because I can give you one idea now, and maybe we can come back to this in the debate. All what the technologies use as data are from humanity, are from human users. The technology doesn't product any new data, or let's say presque, barely, or because I don't have to be dogmatic, but all the data that is circulating in technology are the data that were producing science the last decades of the last century. And now, of course, the process, the applications are more and more perfectible, are more and more smart. The process is smart. And so they, of course, deal with the data so as to give the most correct answer. So that's why we have to be aware about this first gap. So to think about process, progress. Process is technical. Progress is data, is the mind, is the pride. All we can anyway accord to the humanity. I will make feedback to two notes. There's a lot of literature text that predicting the situation where we are now. I'm thinking about French authors, even Arabic one, but I will talk about the two texts that you know certainly. That means the Brave New World of Aldous Huxley. I read it when I was here. I'm sorry, I didn't know before. It was written in 1932, and the 1984, I read it in French before, of George Orwell. The two novels, as you know, came really in a very critical moment. For the Brave New World, it came after the First World War, and also after the economic crisis, 1929. And that time, we have a crisis also with the industry, with that, and the liberty also of humanity that have with this industry, and also the addiction with the development technicity that wrapped really the way of thinking of humanity. That's why we see that human being became just a machine. But this is really prognostic disease. That's why I made a prediction for the author that he thought that it will come, this situation will come in 100 or in 200 years. But if we see ourselves now, we are really many victims of this brave new world. The important thing is not if we are or if we are not, but the important thing if we are, and if we are conscious about if there's awareness about this or not. And for the 1984, it's about ideology. It's after the Second World War, and as you know, there's two blocks, East and West, and all the crises that the two blocks has. So George Orwell talked about this problematic of ideology, which really interrupt anyway the critical thinking and also freedom of thinking for human being. So I would just say something about this kind of novels. Of course, they belong to the science fiction. And science fiction, it's a kind of literature that we are not in the fiction, just in the fiction. We are also in what we call a virtuality. There's a very important debate between some critics who talks about fiction, Dorrit Cohn, Kate Hamburger, and Jean-Marie Schaeffer, who writes, he's the last one who writes about this topic. Why the fiction? He talks about the virtuality. Once we have in the text something that we can find in the reality. Not exactly, of course, the same in the fiction, but the projection, we can really find a connection between the text and the context. And if we read these two novels, we are really in this situation of science fiction that give us really an experimentation. That means if we read these two books, we have already the answer of our questions that we can ask now towards machine in general, not only technology. So I have this another author who is Canadian, Regine Rubin. He talks about the saber human. Saber human is a character in the novels who have really his clone in the reality and of course also in the novel. And that means we have really a continuum between the text and the context. So I will give some, I find really this conclusion of Neil Postman. I'm using ourselves to this, his writer and critics, when he make a comparison between the two texts. He say that for Orwell, he inflicting pain, but for Brave New World, inflicting pleasure. So there's pain and pleasure. Of course, as I said, there is ideology versus machine or industry. And he said for Orwell, we fear will ruin us, but for the Huxley, he said we desire will ruin us. So desire and pain are the two opposition of these two books. So we have here really an example that literature can give us a projection to deal with something which is really very, very problematic in the way you use it, of course. And this is the meaning that we maybe are losing now. So I will talk about the technology, not really by talking about technology, because technology is technicity. And we know in the human science that the way we name things, we start to construct the meaning. So that's why the more and more, the decades before, the authors use digital. And in French, we use le numérique. Digital, numérique, because in French, we really talk about the statistic way, because the technology is really a statistic process, not more. Means there's, of course, many computing process, which is very complex, which is very high. And this help, of course, to deal with all the big data that are circulating in the technologies. And in English, we use this digital. That's why we have the discipline which calls digital studies. Digital studies, of course, integrate is part of from digital technology. And I think, and I'm very happy to see in the department, you have Department of Writing, Rhetoric of Digital Studies. I really see, when I see it, I see they are already in the front. So as maybe, I don't know really what colleagues do there, but I think that it's the first step really that universities must have. Digital studies with the, of course, technology together with the human science, because this will give us, anyway, another view and also another way to behave with technology. So, of course, technology is changing everything in knowledge, everyday knowledge, but also and mainly the scientific knowledge, the academic knowledge. So that's why we have really to be aware about how, for instance, we can learn with technology, with using technologies, and how also we can teach by using technology, and also how students, learners in general, not just students, learn by using technology, because it's the contact of knowledge, the technology, there's something which is changing. You have to know it. Any knowledge is passing across. Technology are not the same. They are not the same. They are changing because they are the algorithm. They are the code, encoding and encoding. There's also the algorithm. There's also ChatGPT. So all this is transforming by the process. As I said, is a mechanic process, automatization. That's why if you ask, for instance, the learners or users to do work, you have also to show them the best way to use. And this is the important thing. I will talk about it later. So the universities, unfortunately, has really took a lot of time to deal with the technology and also how we can really use it in the best way in the acquisition of knowledge or also in the teachings. So, and every discipline are concerned, human science or science and technology discipline also. So, digital studies is a new discipline because it brings a new way of writing, new way of reading, and also new culture. That means digital culture. The way of writing, it's not just to write like we write in our hand, but it's dependent of the skills, digital skills. And the digital skills, unfortunately, are not really, if you want present, are not really integrate in our practice. That means we are more in practice, but we are not in skills. You can, for instance, ask children or who we call the digital natives to do something with the technology, something that really they can construct, for instance, something which is structured. They will be unable to do it. They will have some pain more than, for instance, playing a game or doing something that they have the habit to do it. But when we are passed to the knowledge, academic knowledge, scientific knowledge, become really handicapped. Because, as we know, for the human science, we need epistemic knowledge. We need critical thinking. We need thought. We need epistemology. We need methodology. We can't really create or we can't construct, for instance, something which is intellectual without really reading books, without knowing authors, without reading about philosophy, about literature, about anthropology, about linguistics. Anyway, what we call not traditional, but let's say ethical disciplines. These are really the most disciplines that can give strong meaning to our acquisition of knowledge, or also our teaching of knowledge. So digital culture is reticulate. What is reticulate form of writing? That means it's culture based on the collaboration. We are technology as a community. We are not individual. As I said, once you put data inside technology, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the community, digital community, that they can modify it, they can use it, they can send it, they can transform it. And this is the model of the digital, of course, culture. So that's why we have to upskill our knowledge about digital studies by gathering at once what the capital of human science give us first, but also to add all what is according to the digital skills. So about this, I recommend the book of Millet Douahy, The Big Conversion of Technologies or Digital. So now we have to know also how we behave as human and as machines, let's say machines, so as to talk about technology, so as to see what is the dichotomy between the two, let's say the two of them. Human being, of course, needs to deal with all the he needs in general by using the thought, using the reason, the thinking. These are material, intellectual, cognitive, metacognitive that we use to understand. But for the machine, it uses the computing processing. That means statistic. Machine doesn't think, but it gives the result. The mechanism of all the operations, which are really in the high rhythm, they give really an answer. So human being, of course, when he produce knowledge, use them with the brain, with the thinking, as I said, but the machine, of course, use just the statistic form. This is very important, so as really to distinguish the two knowledge. So what is now the human challenge? Human challenge, I think that it has to conserve its reading brain, its literate mind. Because I know that you have certainly ideas about this. More we use the technologies, more we use the machines, less we become brain. Because our mind become less and less lazy, because we have always an answer when we use the technology. So it gives us maybe occasion to have this dichotomy, so as to understand the two logics. So I will give you some cases so as to talk you about my experimentation with my students, mainly in the PhD thesis. I start to work in this field since 2016 with the first research about to know how students communicate between them inside a learning device platform learning management system. I have already put the course about literature francophone and also about didactic of French language, and I let them really learn inside this device, and after that I take this all the data inside the device, and I start with the students with Brian Madara. We start to analyze all this data to know just the profiles of the students by analyzing their interaction. So that means the dynamic communication in this device. I will just show you something. What you see in on the left, they are the programs that help us to analyze the data, because we have 331 students, and of course they have generate many data, and if it's not really very easy to analyze them directly. So we use, for instance, Pandas, it's the data analysis. We use also IMPI, it's computational analysis, and Matplotlib, it's to create results and clusters. So this software program help us really to have the profile, and this is the profile in the right. I will show you that's something, and these are what we call the code. The software program generate this language, and this language, for instance, the human science searchers, professor students have really to acquire this skill, because it's very useful to have, for instance, to analyze what happens behind the screen. This one, which is more difficult. So this gives us, of course, the cluster that you see here in your right. We found 4 profiles of our students. As I remind you, 331 students, and by their interaction, we find 4 profiles. The most important one is the indifferent one. That means students who don't care, don't care really about course. That means they can sometimes give in, sometimes not. They are not regular, if you want. They don't really share, for instance, data. They don't really post answers, or they don't ask their friends in the device. So we call them indifferent. Because really they are very indifferent. I love, because in each class we have indifferent. So the second one, important one, is intuitive. Intuitive is a kind of students who do exactly what they do in the social media. That means they are in the interaction. They can just say hello, and maybe sometimes answering, even of course, there's a contract, pedagogical contract for students, that they have really to write correct French, and also, but there is anyway students who participate to this course with this attitude that we call intuitive. That means also he doesn't use the resources which are in the device about French literature, about didactic. Just answer with his own knowledge. So if you see here, we have, first of all, lose very important information, epistemic information about course. And second, we can have a wrong information inside the device that the other students maybe can use as a correct knowledge. And we have the same thing in technologies in general. The third one is pragmatic. Students pragmatic, I think we know them. They just do things in order to have marks, have the good result. If you ask him to put to ask for questions, he will just ask for questions. And if we ask him to answer to 5, he will answer to 5. So he's pragmatic. And if you see the epistemic one, that means who really go to the research first, and he go to post knowledge, epistemic knowledge, they are just 9.7%, which is really very, very few. And if we gather indifferent and intuitive one, they are the same anyway. You will see that we have 62%, which too much. So this is in the micro system, mean device that we know students. We are really enhance them to work, but it gives us this result about something which is epistemic in a way, because literature, francophone, or didactic, or it can be anything else, topology, linguistics, anything anyway. If we don't really use the epistemic knowledge, we will unfortunately have a profile which is poor of knowledge. Case number 2, it's about now to see what state of knowledge that we have in the device. So as you see about profile here, for the process of production, reception, transformation of knowledge, we just remark that it's a second research. We found that knowledge which are sharing between students are just knowledge of the community. That means it's not really knowledge, epistemic knowledge that we know, for instance, if we read the book. And this statue, of course, of knowledge shows that we can't really use technology as a best way to inquire, inculcate, to inquire. Yes, to teach anyway epistemic knowledge. It's very, very difficult till now anyway. And it's also very dangerous to think that if teachers, researchers, students, learners, users, by using technology, they can really upskill methodology or knowledge. It's not true, and we have this experience, which is really scientifically done. Third and last case, she's American teacher in France, Amy Wells. She used mapping, the Google Maps. When she read, for instance, novels about, as you see here in French, in English, she reads, for instance, literature texts of Balzac, of Sartre, etc., and she take the name of the places that the authors talk about, and she looks she looked of these places in the Google Maps so as to see what is the relation between the society and the novels. It's a way to use, for instance, technology so as to have, of course, some ideas about how authors have created their poem or their literature text. Last slide. I know that promise. Now, how we can make connection between human sciences, not just literature, and technology. There's, I think, in my point of view, after 15 years of research and about this field, I think that we really need, beside technology, what we call transliteracy, meta-literacy, and epistemic knowledge together. That must be together in order to tell maybe we are starting another way to behave with this technology, which can be really useful for us. Because transliteracy, it gave us just the basic skills, basic digital skills. That means we are familiar with technologies. It's like in the social networks. So we are in practice and action. We have a facility to do it. Second one, it's meta-literacy that we really have to practice and also have self-reflection. We can upskill, not just have a skill, but to upskill really our practice. Means with the thinking about it. And the second one is epistemic knowledge, because without this one, we will really have a wrong knowledge. And more dangerous, we will share wrong knowledge. And that's mean in some years, like Huxley said, we will be really very full of knowledge. So the epistemic knowledge, of course, we are in the cognition and metacognition. And this is, of course, the traditional epistemic one that we have brought from the Greek civilization and all the civilization after until now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Yeah, from the online audience as well. Yes, sorry.
You go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Since you mentioned 1984 by George Orwell, and in that particular novel, the technology is actually serving ideology. And today we find ourselves in a similar situation where technology is being diverted and instrumentalized for ideology. How can we address this as educators, and how can we bypass, or can we avoid this dangerous path where we, as consumers of technology, we are not always given the choice to choose what we consume. We have become as well blind and deaf to what's good or what's not good. And given the news, the current or recent situation in the United States, where big CEOs, renowned CEOs of technology have basically agreed to serve a certain ideology. So even beyond education, as educators, how do we address that? How do we get out of that
Yes,
dead end in some ways, or temporary, hopefully?
yes. I think that we are in such situation because the discourse is most important now in the society is a marketing discourse. And he just give us the new and the best of technology. Of course, it is very important to say that there's progress, but we don't have another discourse who gives really a reality to know the measure of using this technology. That's why I talk about humanism, and you know that humanity is not at its first disruption. When the Greek civilization passed from the oral culture to the writing, it was also disruptive. Because if you see, just I will make one to see, that means oral culture, we have all here inside our brain. We take it with our hand and we pass it, throw it away on the paper, papers, or the stone. In a way, there's the first technicity. That means our sovereignty on our knowledge of thoughts starts at this moment. And Aristotle and maybe Plato, he talked about this, and he said, writing for human can be like pharmacon. That means the way we use the medicines, it can be useful and helpful if we use it in the right dose. But if we exceed the dose, it will be a disease. It's exactly the same by writing and also machine writing and also technology. And this is, I think, the most critical problem we have. When we have to use technology, is it every day? Is it in every moment? Or we can really say, I can really first start by searching, by walking myself, by also by also using my brightness, my mind in a way, to keep it first alive, dynamic. And after that, if I have really some help, I will go to the technology. It's like, for instance, before, in my generation, when I was younger, we use, for instance, the dictionary, we use the encyclopedia, we use even books about something that we don't know. To know, for instance, some information, or to write even essays, etc. But the way we use it, of course, we appropriate ideas, but not the content. Now we are first obligated, so that means alienated by this discourse of marketing, but by also the discourse of technologue, engineer, and of course it's okay because they have really to show to the humanity all the progress that technology do, and it's very important. And we have less discourse of the human science that really can give sense, give meaning of the way we can behave. So that's why we are in this situation. We are in the system where we are more in practice, as I said, but less in reflexive behavior.
You,
Thank you, Mustafa, for this great talk. I guess my question is, are you suggesting then that the way to, or I guess maybe I should ask, what is the response to this disruption that is most appropriate for us as educators? Like, because, you know, I know some people say embrace AI technology, and some, you know, say, no, we need to de-technologize in order to get back to the fundamentals of an educational model that actually is really about engagement. So I don't know, what do you suggest?
Yes, I suggest just to change our way of view towards the technology. That's why we have really to make the technology something else than technicity. Because if we say technology, for us, human science, I don't know how I can develop, for instance, application. And they don't have really, I don't care anyway. I'm happy that I have it, but so we have really to give more interest to educating side by enhancing, for instance, our practice of the technology. That means we have to put more knowledge, epistemic knowledge on the technology even. That's why digital studies is important more than technology. Like if we talk about, for instance, how to learn a language, how we can study, how we can teach or even study a language. So there's steps, there's skills. It's exactly the first. If without digital skills, we can't really do anything with technology, even with our students and teacher, and of course, user. This is the first one. Second, we really don't have to forget that epistemic discipline science are very important because this gives really the sovereignty to humanity. You know that best technologue, when they are asked about what they do once they go home, say that they don't use technology. They read literature, they see film, they play with their kids. Anything else than doing technology because it's a job. If you see, if in our daily time, we spend our time in using technology everywhere, anywhere, and so on. So this is the meaning that we have to find. This is the pharmacon about what talk Plato. At what time it can be useful, at what time it becomes dangerous. And most important thing is to conserve really our awareness about the once we lose our brightness, I think it will be too late, unfortunately. So that's why actually and George Orwell are very important to show us what we can have as a situation in some days, some maybe we are already in. in some years, some decades.
Thank you, Professor Confe. So I have one question about a very specific skill from the many literacies we see, and it's my favorite actually. It's critical thinking. So if we see the link between literature and technologies, we can see that they have one thing in common, and it's critical thinking. So we can theorize and say that it's something very necessary for both topics. But how can we make sure and build that skill for ourselves as students, as future researchers, and as teachers? Because our students lack critical thinking. So how can we improve that?
How we can improve the critical thinking?
Yes.
Oh, by continuing reading and also practicing epistemic knowledge, of course. And you know, there's not automatic relation between technology and literature. Literature exists because it exists all time, and it will continue to exist. That's why I talked at the beginning about the universal side of the literature. The technology is something new, raising in our society, and it structures really our life, our relation, meaning, our thinking. And here is the way that we start or that we lose our critical thinking, because it's new. And we are maybe in this society which is in changing period. So I know that technologue now and the engineer are working on how to disappear all the materials. That means we can really have the technology inside, incorporate in us. Don't worry, it will come. I remember once I finished my thesis, they talk about the smartphone. I said, possible. I have the phone at home. I use it to have all the material I call with this. Now it's a reality. At that time, really, it's something science fiction. So it comes, and they think if it comes, it will be worse. I don't want really to be too negative, but that's why literature, but also other disciplines of the human science are very important. That associated with the technology can really give what we lose, what we are losing now with using of technology. You know, for instance, I really discovered this one in the research I do it with a student. He asked about what kind of paper students read, media in general, television, radio, and so on. And you know what is I'm astonished when I read the answers. I find that the way that they get to the media are the social media. That means from WhatsApp, from Facebook. These are the devices where they get to the knowledge, and this is really dangerous, of course. I give the example of 331 students, and you can imagine thousands of millions or maybe more that really learn by social media. So it means now are unfortunately not really upskilling our critical thinking.
Thank you so much. I have a question. What do you think of certain artists and who use platforms like Twitter before X? And there's also this idea of literature, right? So they use Twitter to create literature through Twitter. And so, for example, they share either like a small fragments of stories or novels, like in a form of series, to make the masses read more literature, and make literature accessible to younger generations who are more geared toward social media, or sometimes just very small pieces of literature like poems or novellas. So what do you think about this association of literature and technology?
So if you look at the example you gave, which is very important, we talk about artist. It's his title. Means he's already said. And in this way, they really use technology as it is from the beginning. That means a way of communication, not way of creation. All that they create is come from here. Now the users, maybe the readers, because you have to know that once they publish their prediction inside the platform, they really are not the owners, because there's for instance, a clause of the contract that all the content crossing from the technology belong to the technology. So I think for this case, any problem, because it's a way to share, to communicate a production. Yes?
Thank you so much for a really interesting presentation. I'm wondering your just opinion on the notion that the just sheer surplus of knowledge is creating this lack of critical thinking that we're talking about, and like, if you would agree with that, how do we find a happy medium in still taking your advice and consuming literature and reading and like finding new stuff out, but not overloading ourselves in a way that we are taking the easy way out and not critically thinking? That makes sense.
Yes. So I just will make the difference between what we can upskill by using technology and what we can capitalize when we are reading epistemic knowledge. That's why I give the example to show that critical thinking came first by methodology and epistemic knowledge. And if we have this associated to the technology, we can really have the two of them. That's what Bernard Stiegler's called the organology. That means what the human brain product as, of course, thinking, and what the technology gives out in order to empower this. So in the two of them, we need always the skills. The negative side of what we have at the university, or what we risk to have in university, is just to be more in practicing and not in upscaling our knowledge about technology, because it's not just technicity, it's also knowledge of the technicity, knowledge of practicing technology, and of course not to consider anything coming from technology as right. We have really to have the same behavior with any knowledge we acquire. I answered?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes?
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about meta literacy and echo chambers. How do you think we can use meta literacy to dismantle the online echo chambers that have been created in various social media platforms, especially when there are individuals who, when confronted with a different viewpoint, refuse to believe what is scientifically proven to be a fact?
Yes, very important question. That's why I think that when you use, for instance, as teacher, or even I think in community of students, when we use device in order to acquire knowledge, course, or anything else, you have really to know that, first of all, the way we learn, we study is reticulate. That's why I talk about reticulate. That means there is a culture of collaboration. And it's also something that we have to learn. Because, of course, we learn alone, but we learn more with the others. And by learning with the others, we learn also about us. So these contributions, this collaboration gives, of course, more knowledge. That's why, for instance, for teacher, he has really to enhance students to, for instance, to create something which is new. And of course, this is, as I call it, knowledge of community. It's not really epistemic knowledge, but it's just a way to be in situation to experiment a way that we can acquire knowledge with the others.
Any questions from the online audience? Good. Well, maybe one more question from me.
Yes.
It's been a really, really fascinating talk, and I'm forced to think about my own struggles about technology and stuff. And I do acknowledge the wonderful things about technology, which was not possible when I was born, for example, communicating with family in Japan right away, or at this very moment situation. So, but I still have. I also do see the negative impact of the technology that are coming into our business, including education, teaching, plagiarism, AI use, generated papers, etc., etc. So I'm really torn, and I think your point about this epistemic knowledge is very important, interesting one. And you also said that it is important for us to be able to differentiate the occasions whereby we're going to use this technology or not using technology. But my doubt is that as you said, technology is really increasing the part of our everyday life, even our own body. And this is going to happen sometimes. What is already happening? When that happens, however, I just wonder if we're going to be able to have this sort of epistemic knowledge whereby we're going to be able to say no to the machines in the first instance. You mentioned at the beginning of the talk, addiction to the technology, which is also very, very important thing. If we are completely addicted and we are not aware of it, there is any way for us to sort of create this space outside technology for us to create and recreate, rethinking about epistemic critical knowledge. So the biggest lesson from your wonderful lecture today is really the question of the limit of this so-called critical knowledge action. Is it really possible today? If so, in what ways, is my the question or comments.
In general, I think it's very critical. I think it's very difficult to say in general, because is there awareness about it? I don't think. But it is possible. It is possible first to ask questions and to be aware about always this gap that it can exist between using technology as practice, as customer, and using it as material that can optimize our way of learning. There is one discipline which is very interesting. I think it's useful for this about just research is the ethnotechnology. The ethnotechnology study the way that we behave with technology and society. Because of course we are alone. We have many knowledge, have our habits, our behavior, many things that characterize our identity, of course. And there is specificity for the technology and also the society. So the ethnotechnology is very useful to understand really what happens now in situation. The most important thing that I'm working with the students in Morocco about the thesis in order to measure the algorithm. We have really developed the device with the we give some characteristics to algorithm so as to see when we really diminish its reactivity, if it gives more things about the epistemic knowledge or not. So it's not yet ready, but I think this is maybe some way to find answer to the same question.
Well, thank you so much for coming and, in the midst of this cold weather, I really appreciate your comments and presence actually. So let's give him a big round of applause.